Victor Haldane's name lit up my phone at 6:43 a.m. That alone should have told me everything. No context, no courtesy, just, why can't IT access the Strategy Vault drive? I was halfway through my first coffee, still in compression socks and yesterday's sweatshirt, when I stared at that text like it personally insulted my lineage. I didn't reply right away. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I knew exactly how this was about to go. They always think they own everything, until you remind them they signed it away years ago. That vault? The entire Strategy Vault infrastructure? My firm built it, hosted it, secured it, audited it per every compliance memo since Sarbanes-Oxley scared half the sector sober. 12 years of surgical documentation, cryptographic controls, and digital chain of custody protocols. The Strategy Vault wasn't just storage, it was proof. Proof of who did what, when, and with whose authorization. Without it, they'd be flying blind through 5 years of private equity deals, executive hires, and backroom acquisition memos. Real quick, before we go any further, 97% of people who enjoy these stories never hit subscribe. If you're one of them, it would mean the world to us if you'd hit that button and like the video. It keeps the channel alive and lets us keep sharing stories like this one. All right, back to Victor. Now, I'd seen guys like him before. You could smell the overconfidence and coconut-scented beard oil from a mile away. He was fresh off some doomed startup that burned through Series B in 8 months and tried to pivot to AI-driven fax automation. The kind of guy who brings in kombucha on his first day and asks to merge the legal archive into Slack. When Victor showed up, the old guard bristled, but I didn't panic. I'd been through 4 executive turnovers and 3 CIOs. Moorcroft had tried internalizing operations once before, a disaster that ended in a shredded SEC fine and 3 very quiet exits. That's how I'd landed the contract in the first place. After that, they let me work. No micromanaging, no buzzwords, just results. My contract with Moorcroft was clean and ironclad. Fixed-term, third-party service vendor. I was the sole custodian of their off-site analytics, internal document archive, and every deal room they'd spun up since 2011. I ran the audits, controlled access, held the keys, and not once did anyone from Moorcroft's board so much as question my process. They didn't need to. Their files were compliant, their audit trails pristine, and their fines non-existent. I made them look good by being invisible. Victor didn't get that, or maybe he didn't care. Either way, on his second week, he tried flexing. I got called into a meeting, unscheduled of course, where Victor sat perched on the edge of a Herman Miller chair like he was auditioning for a TED Talk. "We're reviewing all vendor dependencies," he said, tapping a sleek stylus against his iPad, "looking for cost sinks, redundant cloud systems, legacy holdovers, you understand." I tilted my head. "I do, and I can email over the summary of your current dependencies. You'll find I'm the one holding the redundancy together." He blinked. Didn't like that. He leaned back, lips twitching with the kind of smug certainty that makes men forget who wrote the code they're trying to kill. "You've been with Moorcroft how long?" he asked. 12 years. "And you've never considered transitioning this role in-house?" "I've considered a lot of things," I said, "but Moorcroft's legal team has always been very clear. Custodial responsibility isn't just a line item, it's a liability firewall." He smiled like I was speaking Swahili. "We'll need access credentials, root level, full replication permissions." I didn't blink. "Once legal approves the transition per clause 3.7, I'll be happy to comply." He paused. That was the first crack in his confidence. He clearly hadn't read the contract. Not a word. Just assumed he could text IT and bulldoze his way through a decade of digital infrastructure with a LinkedIn job title and an e-signature. That's the moment I knew. This man was going to break something, and it was going to cost them. Victor didn't waste time declaring war. He just didn't realize he was the one on the front lines with no ammo. The following Monday, he strutted into the board meeting and declared Moorcroft's vendor portfolio bloated. Said the company had become too reliant on outside legacy infrastructure and claimed he'd uncovered 7 redundant cloud services. He called it streamlining. The board called it promising. I called it what it was, a suicide note with bullet points, but no one asked me. Why would they? I wasn't on payroll. I was the black box they trusted to fly the plane, just not land it in public. From their perspective, Victor was the young blood sent to optimize, cut costs, simplify contracts, make it all more agile. Except he had no clue how many of those contracts were actually legally bound vendor custodians like me, or that one of them, mine, held the digital keys to the entire damn building. 3 days after his board presentation, he called me into a meeting room like he was about to hand me a cupcake and a pink slip. He didn't even sit down. "We're transitioning your services internally," he said, barely looking up from his tablet. "So I'll need full administrative credentials today." I waited, quiet. Let him enjoy the silence for a second longer than was comfortable. "Of course," I said finally. "Just shoot me over the legal transfer request so I can get everything aligned per clause 3.7. He blinked. "What clause?" "In our service contract. The one your legal team signed 12 years ago and renewed 4 times. It governs transfer of custodial access." Victor scoffed, actually scoffed, and said, "It's our data." And I swear I didn't plan it, but my eyebrow just raised on instinct. "Is it?" He froze for half a breath. "See, that's the part these types never understand. The infrastructure, the system, the secure logs, the audit pathways, the tamper-proofing mechanisms, they weren't Moorcroft's. They were mine, licensed through my firm. Every drive labeled Moorcroft's Vault ran on our proprietary framework. We didn't just store their data, we sealed it, certified it, and logged every access point through a third-party cryptographic register. And unless they wanted a chat with the SEC and 2 compliance watchdogs, they weren't touching a single byte of it without crossing their legal T's and dotted indemnity I's. He tried again. "Look, we appreciate your long tenure here." "Victor," I cut in, "I'm not an employee, I'm not a consultant. I'm a contracted vendor under binding agreement. My firm owns the framework. Moorcroft leases access. Any change to that arrangement has to go through legal channels." He exhaled sharply and waved a hand like I was being dramatic. "Fine, we'll figure it out." I almost smiled. "You will, or someone will." I walked out of that room knowing exactly what he was going to do next. Try to bypass me. Try to force his way into the system with some internal IT guy who's good with endpoints and arrogance. And when that didn't work, he'd panic. And when he panicked, he'd make a mistake. A documented, time-stamped, career-ending mistake. And all I had to do was sit still and let him walk right into it. It was a Thursday. Gray, wet, nothing special, until my phone buzzed at 9:02 a.m. Victor, in all his strategic brilliance, had finally made his move. "Email me the shared drive password and clear out your desk." That was the entire message. No greeting, no punctuation finesse, just a digital slap from a man who thought he'd just checkmated a pawn, except I wasn't the pawn and he'd just tipped over the king. I stared at it for maybe 3 seconds before my thumbs moved. I didn't even need to think. "There is no password to give," I replied. "That drive is under my company's contract. Please contact legal." Sent. Read. Delivered into the great canyon of cluelessness. What followed was a masterclass in panic disguised as protocol. 5 minutes later, I got looped into an email thread. Victor had copied in legal, trying to fast-track the compliance baton pass like he was still calling plays from his failed startup days. The subject line was painfully smug. Immediate access transition, strategy vault. I opened it just as the second response dropped in, this time from Moorcroft's Associate General Counsel, Leslie Myers, the kind of woman who wears steel in her spine and keeps receipts in triplicate. Her reply was short. "Victor, please clarify, have you formally terminated services with the contracted custodian per agreement? If so, we will need to assess breach implications immediately." And then, just 6 minutes later, the CEO replied, "Daniel Roth, quiet guy, never wasted words. Victor, you just fired a contracted vendor with full control over our compliance data. That's a breach." That was it. That one line broke the dam. Within minutes, the email thread ballooned. Legal, compliance, risk, even external affairs. One of the finance VPs replied with a single word. "What?" Another added, "Wait, who approved this?" And someone from internal audit dropped the hammer. Per clause 5.3D, this triggers immediate financial liability. Victor didn't reply for 20 minutes. I imagine he was pacing, realizing he'd fired the very person who held the encryption schema for the entire Strategy Vault system. Not the intern, not IT, me, the one person who could verify or invalidate 5 years of confidential corporate history. And I hadn't even raised my voice. I just let his thumbs do the talking. While that thread descended into chaos, I brewed another pot of coffee and opened my contract folder. Scrolled to the part labeled Trigger Clauses. Highlighted, bolded, bullet-pointed for idiots like Victor. Premature termination without written notice, breach without 45-day remediation, accelerated penalty. I didn't even need to act. The moment he hit send on that text, the countdown had already begun. They were officially in violation, and the penalty clock was ticking. And the best part? Victor didn't even know what he'd actually terminated, because in his mind, he was firing a contractor. But in reality, he had just fired the vault. Victor must have thought he could outpace the fallout, that if he just stayed loud and confident enough, the facts would bend to his tone. But contracts don't care how smug your voice is, and Clause 5.3d was a landmine he'd just danced barefoot across. Per our agreement, any unilateral termination without 45-day notice constituted a breach, and not just a slap-on-the-wrist breach. This was a teeth-bearing, clause-triggering, financially weaponized breach. Clause 5.3d, highlighted in every renewal. Premature revocation of custodial access invokes full accelerated payment for remaining contract term plus damages. The term had 16 months left. The math? $3.4 million. Payable in full within 30 business days. By noon, legal had turned into a war room, my inbox flooded with timestamp requests, archived correspondences, and chain of custody affirmations. They wanted clarity. They wanted time. They wanted a way to fix what Victor had detonated with a one-sentence text message. Too late. They even tried to argue it wasn't formal termination, just imprecise language. I forwarded them the screenshot, time-stamped, archived via two-factor redundancy, and backed by our contractual clause stating any communication suggesting termination, written or digital, was binding if not formally retracted within 2 hours. Victor tried calling me, twice. I didn't answer. Then he called my firm's main line. My COO picked up and told him flatly, all communications now route through legal. That's when the emails got spicy. Victor, scrambling, fired one off into Leslie, legal counsel subject line in all caps. This isn't what it looks like. His message. Surely we're not holding a long-standing partner hostage over a technicality. This is borderline extortion. Leslie's reply. It's not extortion. It's enforceable. And it's your signature on the latest amendment. The CEO hadn't chimed in since his quiet warning shot earlier, but he showed up for the 4 p.m. executive check-in. Word was, he walked in slow, nodded at everyone, and then just fixed his gaze on Victor. Didn't yell, didn't pound the table, just stared at him. The way you stare at the guy who accidentally formats your core database because he thought clean install meant faster performance. Victor reportedly tried to joke his way out of it. Something like, guess we're learning the hard way, huh? No one laughed, because by that point, it wasn't funny. Investor trust? In jeopardy. Internal audits? Frozen. European partners? Suddenly asking whether their data fell under this unexpected service gap. One of the compliance directors asked, do we even have an internal backup protocol for this system? Spoiler, they didn't. Victor had broken the one thing he didn't understand, and the contract made sure it broke him right back. By Friday morning, the mood inside Moorcroft had shifted from confused to panicked. I wasn't in the building. I was never in the building. But if you'd held a glass up to the firewall, you could have heard the desperation leaking through every call, every ping, every just looping in legal email. The compliance team launched what they called a dependency evaluation, but it was really just a frantic treasure hunt. They started digging through every corner of their internal systems, searching for backdoors, fail-safes, anything that would let them access the vault without me. They didn't find any, because I didn't leave any. Everything ran through our secure shell infrastructure, not just the strategy vault, but the timestamp logs, the document encryption matrix, even the session verification protocols for high-risk asset transfers. I didn't build the system to be difficult. I built it to be airtight. which, ironically, is exactly what they paid me to do, and now they were suffocating in it. It started small. One due diligence report went dark during an interfund reconciliation. Then a vault folder returned a 403 error when an internal exec tried to pull archived acquisition memos. Soon, the chain reaction hit the outer rim. An ESG compliance tracker froze mid-upload. One of their Swiss investors noticed and asked, "Is the custodial log functioning properly?" That's investor speak for, "Are you about to get fined?" By midday, one of the junior compliance analysts made the mistake of trying to regenerate a session key without protocol access. The system flagged it as a potential breach attempt and triggered an internal lockdown. Half of their legal archive went into fail-safe read-only mode. 3 directors got kicked out of their own folders. Victor tried to fix it the only way he knew how, by pushing it onto IT. He cornered their head of IT, Marcus, and barked something like, "Restore access to the strategy vault. Now." Marcus, poor guy, just shook his head. "We can't. The access keys are vendor-controlled. We were never issued master credentials. Only temporary session IDs tied to her firm's framework." Victor asked, "So how do we override that?" Marcus replied, "Flat. You don't." Victor stared at him like he'd just suggested lighting the servers on fire and mailing the ashes to the IRS. Meanwhile, every attempt to bypass the system was recorded and time-stamped. By design, that's how we built it. Every failed access attempt got logged. Every unauthorized session pinged a security notification. And every escalation attempt? Replicated off-site in a compliance-ready audit trail. By the end of the day, the system had recorded 62 failed login attempts, 4 internal escalation flags, and a rising error trend on time-sensitive compliance checks. And the kicker? They were doing all of this under the assumption that if they just got around the tech, they could clean it up later. But the truth was brutal. There was no later, because Victor hadn't just pulled the wrong thread, he'd ripped out the spine. By the start of the second week, even the people who didn't know my name knew my contract. 20 business days. That was the window Moorcroft had to crawl out of the hole Victor dug with his "clear out your desk" text. And every tick of that penalty clock got louder, especially for the people who weren't even in the room when it started. Day 1 was all denial. Legal played word games, IT played dumb, and Victor kept saying things like, "It's being handled," to anyone who dared ask why they suddenly couldn't pull last quarter's audit trails. Day 3, the cracks got wider. A London-based investor flagged a missing compliance link and asked if Moorcroft had altered custodial arrangements. That phrase alone, altered custodial arrangements, was enough to send shivers through any risk officer with half a brain. Because if that reached the FSA, or worse, the SEC, they wouldn't just face questions, they'd face sanctions. By day 5, one of the compliance analysts resigned without fanfare. Just packed her things, left her badge on her keyboard, and slipped out before lunch. Word was she'd already been interviewing, just needed a push. Victor gave it to her. Day 6, Moorcroft tried sending a formal retraction notice to my firm, claiming the termination was inadvertent and requesting we disregard prior communications. My legal team replied with a PDF, 1 page, bold text. Clause 5.3D has been activated, breach acknowledged. Penalty clock in motion. Day 8, the internal audit board launched a probe, not because they wanted to, because they had to. The trigger? 3 missed verification timestamps on prior year data retention reports. That may not sound like a crisis to outsiders, but in finance, that's a siren. Especially when it comes to investor audits, especially when one of those investors sits on a European regulatory board. Day 9, Victor stopped coming into the office before 10 a.m. Rumor had it he was meeting privately with legal every morning, trying to spin it, trying to blame legacy systems, as if the vault was some rickety cobweb he inherited instead of the one lifeline Moorcroft had left that was still technically operational, just not to them. Day 10, I got the email. Subject: Exploring options. From Moorcroft CFO text: Can we salvage this? I read it twice, not because it surprised me, but because the tone had shifted. No demands, no pretense, just 5 desperate words wrapped in corporate courtesy. I didn't reply. I forwarded it to my legal team with a single line: Please respond accordingly. Their reply went out before noon. Calm, surgical, unforgiving. Vendor remains in breach protocol enforcement. Any remediation discussions must include settlement of accelerated payment and formal reinstatement under amended terms. Translation: you broke it. You pay for it. Then we'll talk. That afternoon, one of Moorcroft's internal Slack channels leaked. It was a screen grab of a private message. We didn't just lose the keys. We threw them in the ocean and told the Coast Guard we had it covered. No one laughed. Because the ocean was rising. I didn't announce anything. No LinkedIn status update, no smug retweet, just silence. Because the kind of leverage I held didn't need volume. It needed timing. By day 14, the whispers had legs. People in the industry noticed something was off. Compliance friends pinged me quietly. What's happening over at Moorcroft? Are they bleeding data? Did you walk, or did someone push? I didn't answer, but I didn't have to, because the vultures did. Hargrove Beckett, Moorcroft's biggest direct rival in the boutique finance compliance space, reached out first. Their director of strategic ops messaged me via secure line. "Been watching Moorcroft flail," she wrote. "We won't insult you with 'Are you available?' Here's our actual offer." I opened the attachment. Double retainer, full autonomy, director title. A discretionary budget clause that made my eyes widen for the first time in weeks. They weren't playing around. They knew exactly what they were buying. Not just me, but the systems, the structure, the credibility. I signed, no drama, no last-minute counteroffers. Just a quiet email to my counsel. Initiate formal vendor transition, effective immediately. 2 days later, Victor cracked. He sent a direct email, subject line lowercase, no punctuation, just, "Can we talk?" His message was short. "This got out of hand. I think we both know that. Let's find a way to walk it back." I didn't reply. My counsel did. "All future contact must go through legal." That line felt like the click of a vault door locking for good. Meanwhile, inside Moorcroft, they were scrambling. The board held a crisis session, off calendar, off record, the kind where phones are left outside and nobody smiles when they sit down. They authorized a partial payout to my firm, just enough to keep investors from walking. It didn't cover the full breach penalty, but it paused the bleeding long enough to buy them 2 more weeks of hope. Victor wasn't in that meeting. Word was he'd been advised to work from home until further notice. A polite corporate exile. The best part? I never threatened. Never leaked, never gloated. I just left and took the one thing Moorcroft had always taken for granted: control. They called it a routine quarterly audit, but everyone in that room knew it was a post-mortem in slow motion. Compliance sat stiff as mannequins. Legal brought a note-taker. The CFO looked like he hadn't slept in 3 days. And the CEO, he just stared forward like he was watching a fuse burn down. The first slide came up on the screen. Slide 1. Unauthorized termination of data custodian, violation of Clause 5.3d. The words hung in the air like a bad smell. Everyone knew what it meant. Everyone knew who it meant, but no one wanted to be the first to say it until the second slide loaded. Slide 2. Regulatory risk, 7 internal processes unavailable due to custodial lockout. That one made the room shift. Chairs squeaked. A throat cleared. Somewhere, someone muttered under their breath. The third slide didn't help. Slide 3. Pending legal claim, 3.4 million accelerated penalty plus damages. Status, unresolved. It was all there, itemized, time-stamped, undeniable. A full audit trail of mistakes, starting with one man and one text message. A text message he probably thought would never be seen outside his phone. Now it was projected 12 feet wide in front of the people who approved his hiring. The CEO turned to Victor, slow and deliberate. "Did you check the contract?" Victor looked like he'd swallowed a paperclip. "I mean, he worked for us for years. I didn't think..." Leslie, legal counsel, didn't let him finish. She corrected, calm but sharp. Then, louder, "She worked with us, not for us. There's a difference." Silence. Heavy and long. Nobody defended him, not one person. That same week, over at Hargrove Beckett, we onboarded 2 of Moorcroft's clients, not prospects, clients, fully transitioned. Their files arrived with ribbons of apology and nervous urgency. One of them, a mid-sized family office out of Chicago, said it plainly. We don't trust Moorcroft's data posture anymore. I didn't smile. But I did make sure our onboarding analyst attached our new custodial agreement. Same language as Moorcroft's, just one clause shorter, because I'd learned something too. No matter how airtight the contract, the one thing you can't write in ink is common sense. And Victor? He didn't have it. But he sure as hell signed away $3.4 million trying to pretend he did. A month later, on a random Tuesday no one will remember, Hargrove Beckett quietly updated the leadership section of their website. No press release, no champagne, just one clean line under the infrastructure tab. Evan Rudd, Director of Data Infrastructure and Compliance. No title fluff. No visionary strategist nonsense. Just the truth. The name that had always been behind the vault, the spine of the systems everyone else tried to pretend they understood. Meanwhile, over at Moorcroft, the air was thick with selective amnesia. They issued a quiet settlement to my firm. No statement, no press coverage. Just a wire transfer and a formal withdrawal of dispute, buried inside a 67-page document marked Confidential Resolution Terms. They didn't even ask for an NDA, probably didn't want to poke the contract again. Victor resigned. That's what the internal memo said. Not terminated, not involuntary. Just one word. In quotes, like even they didn't buy it. I didn't celebrate. No toast, no victory lap. I just kept doing the work. I onboarded our new clients, refined our vault protocols, and signed 2 new retainer deals by the end of the quarter. Quiet wins. The kind you don't have to post about because the people who matter already noticed. What mattered most wasn't the payout. It was the precedent. They thought I was an external asset. But the whole time, I was the foundation they built everything on, and they forgot that until it cracked beneath them. I never raised my voice, never threatened, never grandstanded. I just read the fine print and let the contract speak for itself.